My name is Claire Foster. I'm 33. Last Thanksgiving, I ate a fish sandwich alone in a McDonald's parking lot, while my whole family sat down to dinner without me. My mother had called 2 weeks before the holiday and told me not to come. She said I brought negativity into the house, and everyone needed a little peace this year. I didn't argue. Arguing with my mother was like charting a patient who refuses the reading. You note it, you sign it, and you move on. But that night, a neighbor's phone was pointed at the kitchen window. And what I did the day after I watched that video is the whole reason I'm telling you any of this. I work nights in the ICU. That means my version of a normal morning is other people's bedtime. Most days I clocked out at 7, drove to Cedar Hollow, and sat with my grandmother before I let myself sleep. Her name is Margaret. She's 84, sharp as a tack, and her hands don't do what she wants anymore. So I did them for her. I brushed her hair. I filled her pill organizer. I kept a small green notebook by her bed, blood pressure, appetite, which aid was kind and which one wasn't. Nobody asked me to do this. That's just how it landed. In my family, I was the one who showed up. My mother, Karen, called when she needed something and disappeared once it was handled. My sister, Brooke, sent flowers on birthdays and forgot the rest of the year. That morning, Margaret caught my wrist with her crooked fingers. "You're the only one who ever asks how I am," she said. "Not what I have." I laughed it off. Something in the way she said it stayed with me the whole drive home. I didn't know yet she was counting on me to remember it. The first crack showed up on an ordinary Thursday. Margaret was fretting over her medication fund, the small account we use for supplements and the compression socks her insurance wouldn't cover. "It's low again," she said. "Did you already take out for the socks?" I hadn't. I pulled up the statement right there. A withdrawal for $3,200, 11 days earlier. I stared at it the way you stare at a monitor when the number doesn't match the patient in front of you. My first thought wasn't fraud. My first thought was that I'd made a mistake. That's the thing about being the responsible one. You assume the failure is yours before you'll let it be anyone else's. I scrolled further up the page. It wasn't the only withdrawal I didn't recognize. Small enough that no one watching casually would notice. Large enough that, stacked together, they'd emptied most of what Margaret had set aside for herself. I told her it was nothing, that I'd sorted it out. It was the first lie I told to protect her. It would not be the last. I called the bank the next morning, still in my scrubs. I asked them to freeze the account. That's where I hit a wall I couldn't climb. The account wasn't only Margaret's. It was a joint account, hers and my mother's, set up years back for convenience. I was Margaret's power of attorney and her healthcare proxy. But on this account I was nobody. A co-owner can withdraw funds without the other's permission. You could file a report if you suspect abuse, the woman told me. Or talk to a lawyer. Or talk to the other owner. I hung up and sat there while my coffee went cold. I understood exactly what I was looking at, and I understood I couldn't touch it. So I did the only thing that was mine to do. I started saving everything, screenshots of statements, copies of the care log, dates in a spreadsheet under a column I labeled unexplained. If I couldn't stop it yet, I could make sure that when the day came, the numbers would speak for themselves. I gave my mother the benefit of the doubt first. I sent a careful text, the kind you'd send a difficult relative. "Hi Mom, Grandma's care account looks low. Some withdrawals I don't recognize. Want to make sure her fund's okay." Her reply came in under a minute. "So now you're accusing me of stealing from my own mother." I hadn't said the word steal. I hadn't said her name. She heard it anyway, which was its own kind of answer. The next text was longer and colder, and it ended with a line I'd hear again and again in the weeks to come. "You have always brought negativity into this family, Claire. Always. Everyone sees it but you." I didn't send anything back. I took a screenshot instead. I'd worked enough family conflicts across enough hospital beds to know that the person who reaches for the word negativity is usually the person who doesn't want you looking at something specific. To understand my mother's anger, You have to know what my grandmother had done a year earlier. After a small stroke, Margaret asked me, just me, to drive her to a lawyer's office. She signed papers making me her power of attorney, not her own daughter. Me. My mother took it as a verdict, and maybe it was. My sister had her own angle. Grandma's paid-off 3-bedroom house was worth more than anything else in the family, and Brooke liked to float selling it, always framed as concern, always circling back to the number. And underneath it all was something Margaret had told me months earlier, tired and honest. I set something aside for you, for when you need it. You'll know where to look. I filed it under the soft things old people say and forgot about it. That was a mistake I'd correct later, in a room that smelled like burnt coffee with my whole family watching. My cousin Rebecca texted me not long after. Is it true you've been taking money out of Grandma's account? Aunt Karen is really upset. I set the phone down and pressed my palms flat on the counter, like that would keep the floor from tilting. My mother hadn't just gotten defensive. She'd gone out and told people. She'd taken the exact thing she was doing and pinned it to my chest, fast before I could get a word in. That's what scared me. Not the lie itself, but how prepared it was. A person who's embarrassed gets quiet. A person who's covering something builds a story and hands it out. The call came 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, while I was still half asleep after a night shift. My mother's voice had that smooth, rehearsed calm she used when she'd already decided something. It's probably best if you sit this holiday out, she said. You bring negativity into the house, honey. We just need some peace this year. I asked if I could at least stop by to see Grandma. A pause. She's been very tired. Not a good time for visitors. I'll let you know. That wasn't a woman protecting a tired old lady. That was a woman putting herself between me and the one person who could contradict her. I said okay. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed and understood I'd just been handled the way you handle a problem, not a daughter. And a quiet, cold thought sat down next to me. If she was working this hard to keep me away from Grandma, then Grandma was exactly where I needed to be. I didn't fight the ban. I called Cedar Hollow directly, not my mother, and asked how Margaret was doing. She's fine, the nurse said. Asking for you, actually. Said you hadn't been by. So that was a lie too. I saved everything again. And I made a quiet decision. I wouldn't crash their dinner, wouldn't beg. But I also wouldn't sit home and let them narrate my life without me. I'd go somewhere, be a person that day instead of a rumor. That's how I ended up at a McDonald's on Thanksgiving. It wasn't a tragedy. It was just quieter than I planned. The woman behind the counter, Rosa, took one look at me in my good coat with nowhere to be and understood the whole thing without a word. She brought me a hot apple pie I hadn't ordered. On the house, she said. You look like you could use something sweet. It was the kindest thing anyone had done for me in a month, and it came from a stranger in a paper hat. I didn't know that across town, my absence had already become the evening's entertainment. I didn't know a neighbor was standing in her yard with her phone raised. The message came at 8:47 that night, while I rinsed my one plate in my kitchen sink. It was Helen Parker, who'd lived next door to my parents my whole life. 2 winters back, when her husband was dying at home, I'd sat with him on my nights off so she could sleep. She never forgot it. Claire, honey, I have to send you something. I thought about it all through dinner and I can't sit on it. Under it was a video. 40 seconds filmed from her side yard, aimed at my parents' bright kitchen window. I stood there with the water still running and didn't want to press play. Some part of me already knew that whatever was in it, I couldn't unknow it. But I've never once in 33 years been able to look away from the truth just because it was going to hurt. The video opened on the kitchen, warm through the glass. Laughter. The clink of Margaret's good china. Then my mother's voice, raised in a toast, easy and pleased. Honestly, it's such a relief she didn't come. The whole night feels lighter without her. A ripple of agreement. Then my sister, clear as anything. Did you make the call yet? You have to do it before she figures out the account. My mother, breezy. Monday. It's handled. She'll be too busy defending herself to dig around. I played it a second time, volume all the way up, and this time there was nothing left to hide behind. Quieter under the laughter, my mother again. Once the county has it on paper, they'll have to look at her. Not us. This wasn't gossip. This was a plan spoken out loud over turkey, to report me, the power of attorney, as the one stealing from Margaret. Not because they believed it, because it worked. If I was under investigation, nobody would look at the account my mother had been draining for a year and a half. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I opened my laptop, made a folder, and dragged that video into it first before anything else, because the nurse in me knew one law that never fails a family. The person who documents first is the person still standing at the end. I barely slept. By 6 the next morning I was driving to Cedar Hollow. Visiting hours be damned. I needed to see my grandmother before my mother's Monday. Margaret's whole face changed when she saw me. "There you are," she said, like I'd been lost. I asked her the question that had been circling me since the night before. "Grandma, you said once you set something aside for me, that I'd know where to look." She pointed one bent finger at the low cabinet under her nightstand. "Bottom. Under the quilt. It's yours now. I think it's time." I knelt and pulled out a dented blue cookie tin. Inside, wrapped in a handkerchief, her durable power of attorney notarized. A copy of a trust the house protected, placed in it a year ago. And on top, a single page in her shaking handwriting. "You're the only one who ever asked how I was, not what I had. If they ever tell you I didn't choose you, this says I did." I called an elder law attorney that same afternoon, a calm, unhurried man named Thomas Miller. I told him everything. When I finished, he said, "They came at you with words. Rumors, a phone call, a report they haven't even filed yet. You don't fight words with more words. You fight them with paper." He told me not to confront my mother, not to warn them. "Let them file it," he said. "If they lied to the county, that's not just cruel anymore. That's a crime. Let them walk into it." They filed on Monday, exactly like my mother said they would. I found out on Wednesday when Cedar Hollow called. Not the friendly charge nurse this time, the facility's social worker. Her voice carefully neutral in a way that made my stomach drop before she finished her first sentence. "We've received a report expressing concern about the management of your grandmother's finances," she said. "Until the county completes its review, we're required to place a hold on your authority to act on her behalf." I stood in the medroom at work with the phone against my ear, and understood that my mother had done exactly what she'd promised over turkey. She'd made the call. She'd put it on paper. And now the very system I trusted had been turned into her weapon, my power of attorney, the one Margaret had chosen with her own shaking hand, frozen on the word of the person actually robbing her. I asked if I could still visit. "As family, yes," the social worker said. "Not in any decision-making capacity. I'd advise you to cooperate fully with the investigator." I told her I intended to cooperate more fully than anyone she'd ever met. Because here's what my mother didn't understand about the trap she'd built. She thought an investigation was a weapon pointed at me. She never once considered that an investigation is just a set of questions, and I was the only person in this family who had every answer on paper, in a blue cookie tin and a spreadsheet I'd been building for weeks. So I did the thing I'm best at in the whole world. I made it make sense on paper. I cleared my kitchen table and worked the way I work a complicated patient, one system at a time, no skipping, no assuming. First, the money. 18 months of statements laid into a timeline. Every unexplained withdrawal in its own row. When I totaled the column, the number stared back at me. $47,900. Almost everything Margaret had. Then I laid my own records beside it. $6,000 of my own money over 2 years going in. CVS receipts. Pharmacy printouts with my name on them. The green care log. Every entry in my handwriting. Then I matched the withdrawal dates against my mother's own texts and calls. The big one in September lined up with a message about my father's business trouble. The one in June came 3 days after a voicemail about a loan they had to cover. The money had a direction. It pointed straight at my parents' house. I drove to Helen's on a Saturday to thank her, and to ask if she'd tell an investigator what she'd heard. She didn't hesitate. "I sat with your grandmother at more church suppers than I can count," she said. "And I sat with you the last 3 nights of my husband's life, when not one of your relatives brought so much as a casserole. I know exactly who you are. Tell your investigator to call me." The investigator's name was Dana Ruiz. Direct, unbothered, the kind of patience that comes from hearing every version of every family story. She came to my apartment and I had the table set, not with food, with evidence. "Most people I visit want to tell me about their feelings," she said, looking at the neat stacks. "You've got columns." "I'm a nurse," I told her. "I chart." I walked her through it with no editorializing. The timeline, my deposits running the other direction, the care log, the receipts lined up against my mother's own texts. When I reached the trust papers from the tin, she paused. "This house, protected a year ago. Your mother doesn't know this exists." "She doesn't have access to it," I said. "And she doesn't know it's there." Ruiz underlined the line she'd written and looked up. "I don't decide who's a good person, Miss Foster. I follow the money. That's the whole job." "Following the money," I said, "is the only thing I've been asking anyone to do for 6 weeks." After that came the text from my mother. No more calls, she was too smart for calls now. Long ones at all hours. "I cannot believe you would do this to your own family. Your father is sick with stress because of you. And always dressed up new each time." This is exactly the negativity I was talking about. A month earlier, that word would have gone straight through me. Now it just sounded like what it had always been. A hand over my mouth. I didn't answer a single one. I forwarded the thread to Thomas and let it pile up, quietly becoming one more file that was starting to bury her. My sister tried a different angle. She actually called. "This has all gotten so out of hand," Brooke said, voice full of warmth so fake I could have charted it. "If you just tell them you overreacted, Mom could call the report off. This could all just go away." I kept my voice even. "So the report goes away if I say I was wrong. And it stays if I don't." Pause too long. "That's not, I didn't mean." "It's okay," I said. "I understand you perfectly now." I hung up before she could repair it. In her hurry to sound reasonable, my sister had just confirmed, out loud, that the report was a lever they controlled. Not a genuine concern. A switch. I saw my father once more before the meeting. In the Cedar Hollow parking lot, I found his old car, him behind the wheel, not moving, face wet, talking to no one. "Didn't know it would go this far," he said when he saw me. "The business. The loan. I was drowning. Your mother said she'd handle it. I didn't ask how." For one moment I saw him clearly. Not a villain, just a frightened man who'd let shame make his choices for him. "Dad," I said, "are you going to tell the investigator that?" "All of it." His face closed like a door. He put the car in reverse and drove away. 2 days before the meeting, Thomas called with the piece that turned my timeline into something my mother couldn't talk her way around. Ruiz had subpoenaed the actual bank records, the ones showing not just the amount but the hand behind it. The unauthorized withdrawals were all made through online banking and a debit card, he said. Registered to Karen Foster. Not you. There's also a transfer, $14,000, into an account held by Richard Foster, 3 days before a loan payment on his failed business. The dates line up exactly. Everything my father had confessed in that parking lot, the bank had just confirmed in ink. Thomas gave me a choice the night before the meeting. I can send Ruiz's findings to the county directly. Clear your name in writing, restore your authority. Quiet. Clean. You never have to sit in a room with them again. It was tempting. But I thought about Margaret, told her whole life to sit down and let other people narrate it. I thought about the word negativity, and how it only ever worked in rooms I wasn't in. I want the meeting, I said. I want it said out loud in the same room the lie was born in, so my grandmother hears it with her own ears. The meeting was in a small conference room at Cedar Hollow, long fakewood table, a coffee maker gurgling in the corner. My mother swept in first, dressed like church, chin up, already wearing the wounded dignity of a woman about to be vindicated. My father came behind her, gray and small. My sister last, board, phone in hand. Then the door opened once more, and an aide wheeled my grandmother in. Margaret, hair done, eyes sharp, taking in the whole room in one slow sweep. My mother's face flickered. She hadn't expected Margaret to be here, watching. Ruiz opened the meeting, calm and procedural. My mother didn't wait for her to finish. Before we go any further, I just need everyone to understand how hard this has been. My daughter has taken advantage of my mother's trust. She's the so-called power of attorney, and the money is gone. She turned to Margaret, voice softening into honey. Mama, I'm so sorry you have to hear this about her. I let her have her moment. Then Ruiz turned to me. Miss Foster, would you like to respond? I stood because Margaret had spent her life being talked over while sitting down, and I wasn't going to answer for her from a slouch. I'm not going to argue with my mother, I said. I'm just going to show you what's true. I opened the blue tin and laid the truth on the table, one page at a time. 18 months of withdrawals, $47,900, highlighted. My own deposits, $6,000 going in. The care log. The notarized power of attorney. And last, Margaret's handwritten note. You told everyone I bring negativity into this family, I said, quiet and even. What I actually brought was documentation. Then Ruiz opened her own folder. The unauthorized withdrawals were made using online credentials and a debit card registered to Karen Foster, she said. There is also a transfer of $14,000 into an account held by Richard Foster, 3 days before a business loan payment. As for the report alleging financial abuse by Claire Foster, we found no supporting evidence. Her records are consistent and complete. She looked up. Filing a knowingly false report with a county agency is a criminal matter. This case is being referred to the district attorney's office. My mother's composure cracked. This is a setup, she said, rising voice climbing out of its honeyed register. You've all turned on me. I did what I had to do for this family. Nobody else stepped up. She jabbed a finger at me. You always thought you were better than us. I stayed in my chair. I didn't give her the fight she was reaching for. When she finally ran out of breath, I said the only thing I had left, gently, like an ending instead of a wound. You called it negativity because she started asking questions was harder to say out loud. She had no answer for that. There wasn't one. Then Margaret spoke. Not to me, to the whole room, in a thin, clear voice that made everyone lean in. I chose Claire, she said. I sat in that lawyer's office a year ago in my right mind, and I chose her on purpose. She looked at her daughter. She's the only one who ever asked how I was. Not what I had. Don't you ever tell me I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody spoke. My mother sat down slowly, like her legs had stopped agreeing with her. The paperwork moved slower than the movies would have you believe, but it moved. My authority was restored within the week. Adult Protective Services made its finding official, financial exploitation of an elder, and forwarded the file to the district attorney. The bank opened a dispute, and a good chunk of Margaret's money started coming home. I asked the court to appoint an independent conservator going forward, not me, on purpose. I didn't want to be one more relative with a hand near her account. My sister stopped speaking to me. My father sent one text months later. I'm sorry, and nothing since. My mother learned that the word she'd used to run my whole life had finally met a room full of paper. And paper doesn't flinch. Paper doesn't get tired. Paper never once cared how much negativity she said I carried. The next Thanksgiving, I didn't sit at my parents' table. Not because I was banned this time, because I chose not to. There's a difference, and it took me 33 years and one blue cookie tin to learn it. I signed Margaret out of Cedar Hollow for the afternoon and asked her where she wanted to go. She grinned like a girl. Somewhere they don't make you dress up. So I took her to McDonald's. Rosa was working the holiday again. And when she saw me pushing a wheelchair through the door, I watched it land on her face. We got 2 hot apple pies and a booth by the window, and Margaret held hers in both crooked hands like it was the good china, and we watched the sky go dark together. It was the best Thanksgiving of my life. There wasn't a single person at that table who wanted anything from either of us. If a family ever calls you negative, listen closely. Sometimes she brings negativity is just the polite word for she started asking questions we couldn't answer.